Thanks for joining us, everybody. We are taking on a little different format this time. I've just got one speaker, but he's a OMS veteran of over 20 years at Best Buy, and so I hope that we can give you guys a lot of great insights on payment and some other topics surrounding payment this morning. This will be recorded and shared later, so we'll get into it. Next slide, or I've got, so I'm in charge of the slides, sorry. So this is, I believe, what is this panel? Our 10th panel?
10th panel, yes.
10th panel, and we have been at this a year, folks. So OMG was started a year ago. We have 2,000 members. Congratulations to helping us build this community. And we'll continue to do this next year. We are actually trying to plan an in-person event in September. On the 19th of September is when we are thinking about doing an event in New York City. So more details will follow on that. But if you are part of the OMG group, this is interesting. You're in the New York City area. 19th September, scratch that in the late afternoon. We're thinking about doing an in-person event. All right. Let's get to our panel. So I'm going to introduce Boris, and before I do that, the way that this will work is we will take audience questions throughout the presentation, and Karen will look at those. So feel free to engage in the chat, drop questions. We may or may not get to your question, but I will try and interweave questions that come up throughout the presentation. So don't save them to the end, just drop them in as they come up as thoughts, and we will try and get to get to them. All right, with that, I'm going to introduce Boris. So I used to work with Boris at Best Buy a long time ago, and Boris actually came to the OMG group and said, hey, I've got a topic that I'm passionate about that I want to share with the group. So this was unsolicited. So that's a sign that we have a great thing going with this community when we get our actual community members wanting to contribute on their own. So thank you so much, Boris, for taking the initiative. And with that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how the heck you got into all things payments at Best Buy.
Yeah, I've been in order management space for a long time, over 20 years, literally, right? Started with Sterling 4.0, right? And been on a journey. Was a general architect of the whole system. Knew everything, right? And big waterfall adventure got broken down into the agile, team separated. I was always, even when I was overall OMS, I was always passionate about payment. Very responsible guy, and payment is a critical point, right? You impact two sides. You impact the customer if you're doing something wrong. You impact the enterprise if you're doing something wrong, right? So, or you impact both at the same time. So,
right.
Yeah, so you basically, I don't know, people see me as a leader in this space, right? Everybody goes, ask question. I never give an answer when I don't have or not sure, making sure I know the answer, explain why, and people trust me.
That's great. Boris, before we keep going, just can you turn up your volume a little bit? A couple of people are saying they're having a hard time hearing you, or get your mic a little closer. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
How about that now? Is it now better? Is this better?
Way better. Yep, that's way better.
Okay, cool.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Boris. So as I said, drop questions in as we go. We're going to do this a little bit differently. There's going to be a PowerPoint presentation up, and I'm going to ask questions of Boris as we go through these various slides. All right, so we are going to get into it. We're going to go through, we'll set a little ground. We'll set some context on, terms, make sure everyone's grounded on what we're talking about, and then we'll get into some of the recommendations. We're going to talk about transaction fee reduction, as well as kind of payment architecture and some pros and cons about how to set up your infrastructure for payments. Those will be the two main things that we get into today. All right. So obviously, in the ecosystem today, we are going to be talking mostly about that merchant box there and how you as a merchant can lower transaction fees in dealing with the processor. And we'll talk about pros and cons of how to find a good processor. And we're obviously going to talk less about the actual customer and on the issuer side. Whoops, I went too far. So Boris, my first question, Best Buy does take a lot of payment methods, I believe, on its website. Is there, across all the payment types, one, I didn't see that you're taking crypto. Do you have any plans to take crypto anytime soon?
Not at the moment.
All right. He answers seriously. I love it. So is there a payment type out there that you would recommend retailers look at that's up and coming, that's interesting, easy to work with? And conversely, is there one out there that you do not like working with that has, whether it's technical or business related, any insights just on payment methods?
Sure. We have a lot of payments, but the most difficult one is the PayPal. So
okay.
I'll explain a couple of points. So first of all, in terms of error codes which are coming from PayPal, you have 12,000 of this. Very hard to manage. And then there's a second point which prevents you from actually doing any processing. I'll just give you an example. You create one order in Walmart and you create another order in Best Buy. So order is not yet fulfilled, the order somewhere in the process.
Right.
Later on, you fulfill, so you have a problem with your order in Walmart, something. You call PayPal, you start investigation. What PayPal does, PayPal locks your account. Now, whenever you try to process the order from a different vendor, right, merchant, you're not able to even make calls, right? You cannot refund, you cannot go, you cannot do nothing. So now you're getting all these error codes and you are in limbo, right? Customer returns me stuff, I cannot refund the money, right? I need more money because customer changed location, I need more tax, I cannot get it. So this is kind of making you looping on that thing, which is make it very difficult to manage. So this is not a good payment.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Any other payments that are newer out there that you guys are looking at and or have implemented that you would point people to?
I mean, wallet type of payments coming in.
Okay.
Right. People do wallet, the newer ones. There's some other ones like Zip, right? So type of buy now, pay later. So you're actually getting the product and paying off your whatever to the leasee. That's also.
And from a technical, from an operations perspective, supporting those buy now, pay later methods. Any particular challenges that you've come across there?
Some of them look just like a credit card. Some of them are a little bit more difficult.
Okay. All right. Any would you make a recommendation on one to start with in terms of buy now, in terms of ease of use?
Yeah, I see plenty of merchants doing these things like Zip or whatever. So I see always when I'm in a cart, I see a variety of offering, right? Because I mean, what you need to do for that, you go apply. Right? So basically, you go in application and they approve your credit and they pay for the order actually, right? And then you paying them off, and there's a charge fee from the customer to that guy. So basically, if you don't have money right away, you can still buy your product and pay it off monthly basis, whatever the case.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay, so just to level set everyone on these terms, right? These are the things. These are the fees that we're generally going to be talking about today in terms of how to improve executing on them. The first thing I want to ask you, Boris, is there any scenario when we talk about authorization, is there any scenario where you don't recommend doing an authorization in the checkout flow? So that's my first question for you.
I think you always should do that.
Okay.
The first check, customer has the money, right? Customer may go lock up your product, right? You reserving the product, and then you end up having an issue with the payment.
Mm-hmm.
You should at least, you should get an authorization
Yeah.
C, because authorization is not just, okay, I'm checking the money. I'm also doing some fraud stuff, right? So that there's a point.
Yep.
I would always recommend to do authorization up front, because there's another point. You may have a mix of payments on the incoming order. You want to do all of this.
Okay.
I mean,
don't
there
just
are
authorize
cases when
one.
you skip it. Yeah, there are cases when you need to skip it, right? There are cases. So, but then you need to do it right after, right? Right after order gets into OMS, you still need to check the payment before you do any other actions.
Yep. Okay. And then the other thing I want to talk about, or just ask a question, we got refunds on here, is Best Buy looking at or already doing advanced refunds on returns? So if a mail-in return, customer puts it in a box and they scan that, are you initiating a refund transaction as they're doing that, or are you waiting for it to come back to the warehouse?
I think it's a smart thing to wait on it, because your product, your box might come empty, damaged, whatever, right? So the return may not be that straightforward.
Right. Okay. Right. So you guys have enough concern on the risk of the return coming back that you're still waiting. Okay.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
It's just my opinion. I'm not in the return area, right? But that's what I would do, right? I would wait. I will get that thing. Then there's another thing. Some merchants do return authorizations, right? If you want to return it, I actually asking you why and whatever, right? Charging you restocking fee, whatever. So there are complications.
Right. Okay. Then let's talk about chargebacks. What do you view as a best in class? Just so people have an idea, what's a good benchmark on chargeback rates? And I know that Best Buy is obviously a larger target than other retailers out there. But what would you give us as a data point there?
I mean, I have no idea. So all these things, right? How much you pay, transaction fee, all that stuff is kind of, you can find everything on the internet. None of this will be showing up. This between processor, bank, and merchant, right? All those agreements.
Right.
But chargebacks is kind of a bite out of your profit, right? First of all, you may lose money for the product, plus you're getting those fees on top of it for processing, right? So yeah, it's a.
But you guys generally try and, I guess can you give us an insight on the fraud hold rate in terms of a benchmark there? What's best in class? Are you holding, 2% of your order dollars? Are you holding 5% of your order dollars? Just a range there?
This is not my area. All I know, we make variety of fraud calls, and some of them get green light right away on the spot in the response. Some of them get hold, and the whole time depends, right? On, kind of order and what kind of error the fraud check system throws at you. So yeah, I have no idea how many got in hold at the moment.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So let's move on and let's talk about some of these fees. All right. So these are all of the fees that we're going to go through, and some of them obviously people are well familiar with. Some of them they may not be. But let's talk first about a flat fee. So what is a flat fee that's charged to every transaction, regardless of the price? Give us an example of that on an order, Boris.
So flat fee would be charging you $5 for an order for processing that thing, for example, right? I don't know the real numbers, and we're not doing the flat fee. And then again, for each merchant, whatever the set of products, whatever the set of prices, they need to assess all of these different pieces to decide which one is better for that specific merchant, right? So if I'm selling very cheap stuff and maybe percentage-based fee is better for me, right? Maybe transaction fees, right? So I just need to calculate all that math and see how much I will spend for the processing. So this is even late. So I'm more on technical side, more what I'm doing. This is kind of a different area of the people who on the other side, on theoretical side, on the knowledge on the banks and fees in general, and people who get into the negotiation process, right? Because they actually can get a better fee.
Right. So based on your business particulars, there are two different ways to go: percentage-based, flat-based. And we're not going to address that part of the card transaction today. That's obvious. There's a certain percent that you're paying on the purchase cost. We're not going to get into those percentage rates today, but we'll cover the auth and the settlement fees.
Right.
So tell me more about this processing and integrity program that Visa's launched. Are other card holders looking at doing this? And I guess why is only Visa doing this?
I just stated that one because they usually the first one. Visa is like 52% of customers have Visa credit card, and Visa is kind of a leading company. If they come up with something, the other three will catch up very soon, right? And when I'm talking about zero flow fee or misuse fee, every credit card company will have similar. They may have a different name, but they will have a similar stuff because they all follow each other. So that I'm just stating that program was like, okay, Visa came up with that thing, and there's a reason for it, right? So they're trying to stop erroneous authorizations, right? So they also kind of protecting the customer and protecting the merchant as well.
Okay. And so let's tell us more about this zero floor fee. So this is a 20% fee anytime there is a settle, or
this is a 20 cents every time you settle without a good authorization.
Right. And is that something that you guys get? How often does that happen? Or have you prevented that from happening? Like, what would be a best practice to, obviously you want to settle on the same amount as the auth, but what situations might come up that someone gets into that?
So yeah, you always must have an authorization, right? This is one of the other rules so how do you prevent that? And when it happens, you may have a slight gap in the processing, right? Somewhere around your authorization expiration. When your product is out of the door, right? Now you're doing the reversal, and now you're trying to do a new authorization as you're supposed to, and then you get a decline on it for whatever reason, right? And we'll be talking about the reasons why you possibly can get a decline. So in that case, you don't have a good authorization, period. Nothing you can do about that, but you want your money. Your product is out of the door. So you settle on that authorization, and that's why you're paying the 20 cents for that specific settlement.
Got it. Okay. And then on this misuse fee, let's take a pre-order as an example. as that's, let's say it's a 6 month out pre-order. As long as you are re-authing, you're avoiding this fee. Is that correct?
Reoffering is not a good idea. So when you authorizing, you're paying some money. When you reversing, you're getting some money back. Not all of it, but some. You're
Right.
doing that every 10 days or every 30 days or every 7 days, whatever, right? So a visa going to 10 days, master is 30 days of this. So if you're doing that, you're losing money while you're doing this for 6 months. Pre-order is actually very easy. Pre-order is having a street date, which means they telling you when that thing will be available to the customers, right? So you do the first authorization, as I suggested earlier. You do a reverse on it, and then you sit on the order until that street date, closer to street date. Let's say street date is in 7 days. I would wait another couple of days. Street date is in 5 days. I'm doing the authorization. So I get the authorization on a street date. I have a valid authorization. I ship the product. I settle on it.
Got it. So you're recommending that, let's say there's a month in between the order date, the street date, and the auth window is 10 days. You get an auth, you then reverse that auth, and then do nothing until you're ready to ship that product, and you auth again. So for the, let's call it 20 days in the middle, you don't have an authorization on that order. Is
And
that
that's
correct?
okay. And that's okay. So that way you're saving your processing fees, right?
Right.
Otherwise you
But I
will
think,
spin on it and there's nothing good about that.
right. But I think that's a misnomer that's out there in the industry, is that you always have to have a valid auth on the order while it's sitting out there. And so this is a best practice around reversing it, sitting on it, and then it'll obviously to avoid those multiple authorization attempts. Yeah. Okay. Got it. And then my next question on chargeback fees. So are you getting assessed chargeback fees regardless of the outcome of the chargeback? So a customer creates a chargeback, the bank denies the chargeback, you're still getting a chargeback fee. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of it, but what I think would happen, chargeback is the final thing. Bank is taking your money. Whatever the dispute says, right? Whatever, right? But chargeback is an event when you paying the money and you're paying the fee.
Right.
So it's already decided. I think it's already decided. Nothing you can do about that. You can do a dispute, whatever, go into other things, prove you whatever customer got the product, you whatever charge the money. You can do all of that.
Yeah.
It's an expensive process.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, these are some general fee strategy reductions. The one in the middle, optimizing payment processing, is the one that we're going to go into next. But you mentioned that, you mentioned here a best practice is promoting the right payment method for each transaction. So are you doing anything at Best Buy to drive a certain payment selection? And how does this really apply to e-commerce?
Merchant can, let's say merchant has their private cards, right? A bunch of companies have their private cards.
Yep.
So if I go to Target, use their card online or in store, I get 5% off.
Yep.
That's how I'm driving. And then because of the private card, the fees are less, right? So the fees are less, and that's how I'm promoting specific payment.
Yeah. Outside of that obvious one, the private label card, is there anything else that you're doing to drive use of a certain payment type outside of, you guys obviously got the Best Buy credit card program. Is there anything that you're doing to drive payment choice?
No, but I see other merchants is doing that. You can, I go to Total Wine. Total Wine says I'm giving you this much less if you use PayPal for this, that.
Mm.
So they promoting variety of things, and that's how you get to the place.
Yeah.
Maybe convincing people to use different payments, which are less fees versus the credit card.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So I know that you've got this comment about swipe as often as you can, and obviously we're talking about e-commerce here today.
Yeah.
And so all these are non-present transaction, but does a bank look at your overall BOPUS rate? Now, I know BOPUS is still a card not present transaction. However, the security of that transaction is much higher than a ship to home transaction. So when the bank and Best Buy are negotiating rates, does the rate of BOPUS actually impact that rate that you're aware of? Does that come into it, or are they just looking at overall e-com versus retail?
It's outside of my area of expertise, but you asking me that question, I will ask some people to maybe teach me about that as well, because
Yeah.
this is an interesting question.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It'd be great if we could follow up with the OMG group on that one. All right. Let's see if I had any other questions. You mentioned in here fraud, address verification and fraud. Are there any fraud systems that merchants, the banks look highly upon, that, are world-class fraud, engines that get that helps with the overall rate negotiation? Is any insights there?
Yeah, I mean, Amex is like, I don't know. Certify, I know the good one, right? So I'm not aware of. There are other ones. There was multiples, and some merchants using multiples, right? At the same time,
Okay.
for the same order, they're running multiples, which is, I mean, fraud is very important. There's different kind of fraud. So what I know, fraud, maybe I want to get a free product, right? I stole somebody's card and I want that. There are other varieties fraud, what basically running volume, locking up your inventory,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know, and in meantime, some other merchant will sell it. So there's tons of fraud is very, very tough area to work with. There's a bunch of bots, right? There's a bunch of bots. It's not even people. Yeah, I mean people coding and doing that stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you get a flood of erroneous calls, and they try to hide it. What they do, they go and get people's names and addresses, right? So when you look at the order, it looks like a real order. It looks like a real person. You can go find out that person, but it's not. So it's very hard to fight that problem.
There was a question that came in from Liz. What are your parameters for identifying fraudulent behavior? I know you're not the fraud expert, but is there anything that you can give to the audience there on some fraud best practices?
I think the fraud check, right, sends everything what you got in order. So customer's name, email address, shipping address, all that stuff, right? And if that customer showed up somewhere, right, the fraudulent system will stop it. So if I stole somebody's credit card, right, and the owner did not yet report it, that thing may go through, and then it will go charge back, right? Because the fraud, right? But if that I use that card somewhere, or and then whatever happened, so that will show up. So as soon as I get an order, fraud gets checked and my order gets stopped, right? So that's the best behavior on it. Anytime you do a modification on the order, you should check fraud again. So anytime whatever happens to the order, that's a suggestion to make a fraud call and protect yourself.
So even if they're changing it from shipping to BOPUS or vice versa, you're going to run that back through fraud.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we're going to get into our first scenario here. And Boris, I'd ask you to, walk us through this flow. This looks pretty straightforward, but I think there's some special things going on here. So go ahead and walk us through what you're doing here. This is a ship to home example.
Right. So those light blue boxes are payment actions, right? So the rest of the stuff is just processing. So if the order comes in, right, you do the checkout, you have an authorization, right? You already authorized it. And
right
now you get an order. Right now, this box where it says send order to OMS for fulfillment, that's when the fulfillment starts. If you fulfill the order right away, right, it gets into a status.
Mm-hmm.
Then you, before those 7 days authorization expiration, everything's fine in there. So before that, you settle after fulfillment, you're done. But if you are not able to fulfill within those 7 days, or the other, so this is just the shortest one, but you can have a MasterCard where it will be 30 days. You have a longer period. Right. Then what you want to do, you want to reverse the authorization. Mm-hmm. And then...
And how soon are you doing that?
I would say you need to do it, I don't know, 1 day before. All that stuff runs on the batch.
1 day before what?
7 days. So you do run it at 6 or run it at 6.5. You don't get to 7. You may be late. You get late, you pay fee.
Right.
Those erroneous fee or whatever fee will come chasing you. So you reverse it. And then again, depending on what kind of product, right? Depending, you sit on it up to some certain point, right? And then you do the reauthorization, right? And then you settle on it as well.
So what's the logic that, this is a shipping example. It hasn't shipped in 7 days. It's likely on back order. What logic are you using to decide when to, reanalyze that and go for another authorization? Because you may or may not know when that order is going to ship.
So there's always a point where order gets from, I'm waiting until I release it to the warehouse, right? Warehouse needs to ship it. So that release as that kind of event. I'm releasing it, so I want that authorization before the release. And there are settings in the system which can do it for you, right? I say, okay, I'm about to release that thing. I want to do authorization. Because if you release it, warehouse may ship it next minute, right? And now you're getting into that settlement without an authorization situation.
Right. So your event is, obviously, if another 7 days go by in this example, you're going to get another authorization because you've reversed an authorization, you have none. You're going to wait for another 7 days. If there's no release on the order, you're going to continue to wait. And then when you see that trigger of a release, that's the trigger where you're going to go re-auth.
That's how you save transaction fees. Yes, that's how you save. I mean, this would be the best practice. This is how you save transaction fees. Otherwise, you spend a little bit, you got 1 million orders, you got a lot of money.
Right. So to be clear, during that time, there's a period of time you have no valid auth on that order.
Yep.
Right. Okay. All right. And that's what we were talking a little bit about earlier. Okay. All right. So there was a question that came in. What is reanalyze payments? Can you elaborate on that step?
I think I misspelled it because it should be reauthorized.
Reauthorize payments. Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you for clearing that up. All right. Okay, so now let's move into a shipping example, or a BOPIS example in store pickup. Go ahead and walk us through this one and what's going on here.
So in the beginning, same thing. You get an order, customer wanted to pick up that order in a specific store, right? You send a message to the store. Store needs to pick it up. If store picks it up within those 7 days, right, you settle on it. So the item is not yet fulfilled, but you settle on it. So you're not subject of reversing and reopening any longer. Now you're waiting for the customer to come and pick up their product. So customer picks up the product and all goes good. So if customer does not pick up a product or customer goes online and cancels it, now you're going to refund the amount back to the credit card.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in this example, there's never in a BOPUS example, you know, you're settling immediately once that store picks the order.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
And on BOPUS, have you guys played around with how long you hold orders before you cancel them? So obviously it's a different question outside of payments, but just from a best practice, how long do you allow the customer to pick something up? Have you played around with that to find a sweet spot?
Order will be canceled on the day 8.
Day 8.
Customer will have 2 reminders to pick it up. Customer will have a final reminder telling the order will be canceled next day on the day 6. Customer has an ability to extend that thing. So you can go online, you can extend it by a week or then next week by a week, I think. I did extend my orders multiple times because I couldn't make the store.
Okay.
And I didn't want to lose the product either.
Right. Well, that's a great idea, offering an extension on BOPUS, but the standard is 8 days. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm going to move into the next example. Now, all right, folks, you need to get dialed in for this one. So as you can see, a lot's going on here. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is some best practices on settlement guidelines. And then we're going to get into this scenario here and the different options that you can choose to when we have different types of fulfillment involved. So let's talk about ship to home first. We just talked about BOPUS. Are you guys triggering the settlement step on a label print at the warehouse or the carrier picking up the product?
We're doing it on the source after the settlement print. After the package, it's packaged, and at the time when it's sitting, waiting for the carrier to pick it up, I think.
Right. Okay. So yeah, when you create a label and it's in a box, you're executing the settlement. Got it. Okay. And then
I mean, order management is executing in the settlement when that other system tells me to do it, right? So so they can change their stuff. Hey, just giving me an event when to do it.
Right. Now, one thing you don't have on here is pre-orders, but I think on the pre-order, are you settling? I think in the example we shared, you're not settling that until the actual shipment of the unit, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then let's just talk about back orders in general. Maybe not so much a payment question, but so this would be non-delivery items. So, you know, some paper or something that's on back order that someone bought from Best Buy, and it's got an ETA, supplier ETA of over 30 days. Like, are you guys deciding not to take orders when past a certain point in your level of confidence about when that's going to be back into a warehouse? Is that like at 30 days or is it 60? Like, how aggressive are you at the back order window?
So I don't know about that, but I can tell you something on the delivery thing. Well, Best Buy will take an order for a delivery item 2 years forward.
Right.
So if example why, I'm building a house and my house will be ready in 6 months. today is a great day and there's a nice price on the product I want to buy for my house. So just to make sense of that discount, I buy the stuff, it gets sit on an order, waiting until that delivery date. So I'm getting a good price and I'm waiting until my house gets built. So that we're taking it far away. I'm not sure about like ship to home and stuff. Other one, what is the strategy on how far we take the order?
Okay, no worries. All right, so let's get into this example here. And before we do, the other settlement thing that we're going to talk about is delivery, and that is home delivery after the item being physically reserved. So let's talk about what physically reserved means to you versus, because when I think about a reservation, typically the order gets created and then I've got an inventory reservation on that product, but I think you guys are treating it a little bit differently.
Yeah, so you need the product be in house because you can go for, okay, I'm expecting this product at that day. It may or may not come, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have your product ready, just like in store, I have a box, I put the label on your box, I have delivery schedule, I have skills to do installations. That's the point I'm doing the settlement for that.
Mm-hmm. So there's a pile of inventory at the warehouse. Maybe there's 1,000 units of a given dishwasher, and that delivery date may be 90 days out. You're not going to reserve that product until maybe 80, 85 days out, right? So it's got a soft reservation in the system, meaning we're counting that there's demand for that item, but you're not making the actual reservation until much closer to the delivery, which allows you then to avoid the authorization of that item until that later date.
So I'm not a specialist on the that side of the house, but I can tell you what I think about that. So let's say I have a warehouse and I have a room for 1,000 units, right?
Right.
And now I have 1,050 orders, right, which spread in time. So if those thousands orders, I lock them up, I reserved, I charge for them. But there's a customer which is in front of the other customer who needs a longer timeline. Now I need to get another units, right? And I need space to keep them and stuff like that. So, I mean, soft reservation is fine, but I need to move inventory. So it's just like a queue, right? I would like work it in a queue. If you don't have any orders and you reserve and you're not moving the inventory, that's fine. You can lock them up. But just optimizing that side of the house.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. Boris, do you know, is delivery, if obviously there's retailers on this call that probably aren't doing delivery of large appliances and TVs, but if you're delivering something out of a store with a local carrier, is that home delivery? Like what is the line between ship to home and delivery as it relates between the card processors? Do you know?
Ship to home is not requiring any schedule, right? So the product is dropped off of your step or waiting for the signature, right? So you need to be at home to sign for it. Our delivery is always a scheduled process, right? I need you to be in the house. The product is heavy, big. I need to bring it in at least inside your house, right? And then all the other stuff, installation, removal.
Yeah.
So this is a truck to your spot.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. All right. So go ahead and walk us through this transaction here and what's going on. And it looks like you've got multiple options. So walk us through the scenario.
So I put together an order to just explain payment processes on these.
Oops, sorry, lost the slide there. There you go.
So I got a couple of ship to home lines with different fulfillment days. I got few deliveries. I got installation. I got the warranty, and I got one back order. All right. So on top, your industry line type settlement guidelines. So when actually you can get the money for it. So in store, as we talked, soon it's picked up in the store. Item is not yet fulfilled, but I settle on it. Ship to home, I need to settle only after kind of fulfilled, right? It's in the carrier's hands or about to be, right? Installation services, I can charge for it when I have the rest of the stuff, schedule, items,
Yep.
warranty only after I fulfill your product for which this warranty applies. So let's go through the example. So line 1 and line 2. Line 1 fulfills the same day or next day. Line 2 fulfills on day number 4. At the top, I have 10 days expiration. And what I want to tell you, my authorization transaction fee cost me 20 cents. This is just an example. And when I reverse, I get 10 cents back. So on the valid authorization day 0, I have the full amount authorized and the $ in the blue box there tells you I spent 20 cents. So now then I settle on the day 1 for one line because it was shipped, and I settle on the day. So on the day 1, I still have the rest of the stuff authorization, valid authorization for. I just lose $30 out of that. Now on the day 4, I settle another $20. Right? And on the day 4, I have the rest of the stuff authorized. So my delivery is scheduled some days ahead. So on the day 10, I need to reverse what I have. And I'm on day 11, I don't have any authorization. So that's when I'm waiting until my closer to the schedule. So if I will reserve the product at day number 12, I have a chance to charge for it, right? On day 12, or I have in green day 15. I'll explain why I would like to do on day 15. So that box is saying I need to spend another 20 cents, right? I'm 10 cents in. So I got 20, charged 20, refunded 10. I got 10 cents in so far. So now, why day 12 is not good for me for like optimal thing? Because day 12, I reserve the product. I can get the money for it. I need to spend 20 cents for it. But if I do it on day 15, my authorization will be still valid, right? For the warranty and for the backorder item. So I just spent 20 cents if I do it on 15th, and I will spend 40 cents if I do it on 12th, and then again for the other two lines whenever they get closer. So I'm just saying in this configuration of the order, there's things to optimize. And this is kind of a straightforward order, no modifications, nothing like that, because if you have modifications and variety of changes, you may have another tries for authorization and other things.
And what is you've got these two choices here, but what is the system rule behind the scenes that's driving you to pick day 15?
So I don't think every system will be able to figure this complex situation, 15 or 12 or 16 as the question comes. 16, why not 16? 16 also a good idea. Why not 17 then? I don't want to be too close to the day. Why? I may get a decline on authorization. I want to give the customer a little bit time to give me a new payment. Otherwise, there will be delaying or canceling that leftover item. So I don't want to do it right before I need it. I want to do it a little bit in advance to still leverage the span of the authorization, like really being valid.
Got it. Okay. And there was a question that came in around extending auth. Does Best Buy get charged for extending authorizations? I don't think you are extending authorizations ever. You're just constantly reversing the auth that you have and then waiting until the appropriate time to initiate another auth. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of the API which will extend my authorization. Maybe we never did it. That's another good idea to ask if it's available. Is it available for every credit card? I mean, all these details need to be figured out. If it's available for one and not for another one, it's not usable.
Right. Okay. But the best practice is, and so I want to get to these rules here. These are they just cover these top 4 rules. These are the big 4 that we wanted everyone to take away from this conversation. So go through these if you would.
So yeah, one of the things not to be subject of fees, always reverse before expiration, and always reverse when you're canceling the order, right? So when you're canceling the order before it was settled, you still have a valid authorization. So always cancel or always reverse the authorization. Never leave it hanging. It will expire eventually, but you will pay more fees and you locking up money on a customer's account for no good reason.
Right. Okay.
So that's the first one. Yeah, and then try to reverse it in the expiration case, maybe closer to the date, right? So you have a little bit more time. But look at your process because it's always like a batch and you may be late.
Right. Okay.
Second one, do not reauthorize immediately after reversal. To my knowledge, there is more than 110,000 issuers across the world. Not everybody is made the same. I'm pretty sure in your systems, you have processes which are not optimized and not working the way you would like them to work. So when you do an authorization, or when you do a reversal, you're actually talking to the processor, not to the bank. Processor may give you a good response, success response. You may feel it's reversed, but it's not. So when you go in to grab another portion of the money, you may get a decline, especially if your product is expensive. Right? So decline is another thing you don't want to get because now you need to communicate with the customer. You're waiting for response. Customer may be late. You're canceling the order. You're losing the sale.
Right. Okay. So bake in some soak time on that reversal before you try and go back out, or it'll decline. Is there a given amount? Should you be waiting a day? Is there a best practice you can give people there?
So everybody needs to decide their numbers, but few years ago we did an experiment. What we did, I remember, on all the declines. So we did not have that delay. On all the declines, we would repeat authorization after 24 hours, and 20% would succeed. So 20% would succeed, right? But 24 hours is too long. Right? Everybody needs to decide how long they want to wait. It also depends on your line statuses and whatever you're trying to do, right? So if you, like you say, if you know your product can sit there before fulfillment for another day, you can extend this a little time. You can sit a little bit on it.
Right.
But if it's much closer, you probably want to do it sometime closer.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. So we're running out of time here. I wanted to just briefly talk about, if you could just give us an overview of what you've made some best practices here around payment processing in and outside the OMS. What is Best Buy's payment architecture, Boris? If you could just give us a high level on that.
So I mean, we use in Sterling, right? For most, we always I was thinking, hey, how do I process that thing outside? And both of them have pros and cons, right? So what's good about processing it inside OMS? It's all continuous, seamless process, right? No delays, no nothing. System always know your payment status because system needs to do the fulfillment process, right? So fulfillment tightly coupled with payment. If you don't have a payment, you don't like to fulfill. From another hand, what I was talking about, all these fine tuning of saving fees might not be in your system already, given to you by the vendor, unless you have a heavy customization on this logic, which is also difficult and complex. Doing it outside, you can fine tune everything, right? Especially if you're doing your own build. But then the system gets disconnected. So you can build it outside, and intelligence of your payment function would have sometimes not even talking to your fulfillment piece because, okay, it's expiring. I will just reverse and reoff it. I don't need to tell anybody unless I fail on it, right? But then this is disconnecting kind of, now I need to tell the system to stop fulfillment. What if I'm already, my box is sitting at the gate and UPS driver is picking it up? I mean, there's this stuff going on, which both ways, works both ways.
If I could, is it fair to say that, if you've got a pretty simple, you're doing ship to home, BOPIS, you're not going to get into these complex scenarios of delivery and installation and and also, of course, higher dollar values. And so that you've obviously gone in and applied a lot of customization to fine tune how these things are working. But generally speaking, if you're down at that lower level of complexity, you would just say, hey, keep the payments in the OMS. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, good. Well, in respect of everyone's time, we're going to wrap up the panel here. Again, we'll share some of the key points with this, but if we didn't answer your question, Boris is part of OMG. Feel free to reach out to him, message him. If this sparks another conversation, put something out into the OMG sphere. That's where we would love people to participate online and get dialogues going. So hopefully you all found this useful, and have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.